I guess to start with, probably a fair question to say, well, why would we use music in the first place? And hopefully everyone here today understands that music is a stormwater modelling tool, and the purpose is to be able to assess various water-sensitive urban design or stormwater treatment systems and determine whether they're meeting the relevant objectives and requirements for stormwater management. These are established through a range of planning legislation and policy. You've got your Infrastructure Act, your Environment Protection Act, etc. And then critically, your water sensitive urban design policy for South Australia, which sets out a range of objectives. We have the music guidelines, which are in train and hopefully will be finished by the end of the month or end of this year at least. And they will set out some clearer guidance on modelling for music and sort of some parameter ranges you should use and some principles and approaches to that modelling. It's probably worth saying that there is some other design guidance for WSUD around for South Australia, but there isn't a lot of it. You've got the Water Sensitive Urban Design Technical Manual. It's good, it's really solid guidance, but it is becoming a little dated, being more than 10 years old now. So that has necessitated, I guess, a little bit of filling in the gaps a bit for us in terms of writing the guidelines and balancing being a pure modelling guideline with providing some of that sort of necessary design guidance that might be a bit missing at times. There is also obviously a whole host of other guidance in existence. Various other jurisdictions around Australia have established lots of guidelines. In developing your guidelines, we've basically looked at the best of what we can get from those other guidelines and tried to pull that in as much as we can. But there are also a number of other design guidelines for wetlands, bioretention and other systems. And it is worth having a look at some of those from time to time to see what you can get from those as well. These are your objectives for stormwater quality, which should be familiar to all of you, I assume, for nitrogen, phosphorus, and suspended solids. And I should mention there's also litter has dropped off this one. And then you've also got the waterway protection with the 1 year ARI, although we don't at present assess that using music generally. And the approach taken in South Australia was to not try to use music to assess it. It is possible to do it, but not out of the box. So where will you be using it? Mostly development planning assessments, and probably 90 or 95% of the music models developed will be for development planning purposes. And then you may also have stormwater management plans, and you may have councils developing water sensitive urban design treatment measures, which you're retrofitting into existing urban areas. There's no reason you wouldn't then also do a music model and then potentially also check that in the auditor to make sure that everything's as expected. Fundamentally, it's all about demonstrating compliance with those objectives. It's worth saying with the draft guidelines, the intent of these really is to set out some baseline expectations. It's to provide some guidance on typical usage and try and support some consistency across the industry. The idea is that you know, everyone's sort of singing from the same song sheet. We're all doing similar things. Where there are things that are obvious that don't need to necessarily be changed for every music model, that people are adopting consistent approaches. They're either using defaults in music where they're acceptable, or they're using suitable other parameters where they're reasonable. That said, we don't want to prevent people from being innovative, from using the latest science where it's available, and you know, potentially deviating from these guidelines where they've got better local information. So we need to be open to that. We shouldn't think of the guidelines as a rule book that lays down this is what you absolutely must do and thou shalt never deviate. At the same time, we shouldn't be just changing things for the sake of it. And it's probably fair to say we've seen a bit of both issues going on over past time, not only for you guys, but certainly in Victoria and New South Wales as well. Where possible, we have referred back to that technical manual for guidance, and we've drawn on that as much as we can, but also being mindful that some of the science has moved a bit in the last 10 years, and we've had to pick up some more contemporary guidance at times.